And so we come to our final thread of the day, which is titled, Am I the A-hole? I have been a stay-at-home mom since a month before my daughter was born. She's 13 months now. This has caused some financial strain in our household. So my mother offered for me and my daughter to stay with them for 6 months on the West Coast. So they can help watch my daughter while I work to pay off some debt and build up a small savings account while my husband goes back home so he can go back to work, take care of the house and the animals. And he would be in the south. So they would be very far away from each other. We agreed to this plan as it's the fastest way for us to pay off a huge chunk of debt since daycare around where we live is not trustworthy. When he told his parents, who live a few hours away from us, he told me his mom suggested that I go back home with him and get a job near our house and leave our daughter with them 5 days a week, and we can go visit on the weekends. I said, absolutely not. I will not give up that much time with my 1-year-old. My husband says I'm the a-hole because I'm not willing to sacrifice time with my daughter like he is doing. We will go visit him every other month for a week at a time, so he's not going a full 6 months without seeing her, and he's going to come to my parents' house in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think it's absurd that he thinks after being with my child every day for 13 months and being the primary caretaker, that he just expects me to switch to only seeing her on the weekends. I also am expecting backlash from his mother when he tells her that I refuse to basically allow her to raise my daughter for the next 6 months. He won't listen to any of my valid reasons, like never being away from her for more than a couple of hours, plus I'm still breastfeeding her at night before bed, and says I'm being selfish in expecting him to sacrifice time away from her without being willing to do the same. Am I the a-hole, or is this whole idea just as crazy as I believe it is? I believe that OP is the a-hole here, to be honest. And I don't mean it in like a mean way, but I think that both scenarios here that they came up with. So one scenario is she takes the kid and she moves in with her parents, and then they're separated for 6 months. So the dad doesn't see his child. I know she says that we'll be visiting him, blah, blah, blah. But essentially they're living in different households for 6 months and across quite a big chunk of the country. And the other scenario is the baby is staying with the grandparents and they're a lot closer, but they can only see the baby every weekend. Now, in general, I think both scenarios suck. I would not choose either scenario for myself or for my family. That said, if you're in a situation where you're like, hey, we're not really happy with how things are going, we're not happy with our finances, we need to change things up, we need to make some sacrifices, what can we do to fix it? And you come up with these two scenarios, then quite honestly, I would not be okay with being away from my child 5 days a week, but I would also not be okay with my child being away from her dad for 6 months. So it makes sense to me to not be okay with both. And it makes sense to me to be okay with both, but it does not make sense to me to say, hey, well, he can give up time with our kid, but as long as I don't have to give up time with my kid, that is what makes it inherently selfish. Then suddenly you are asking for a sacrifice from the dad that you yourself as the mother are not willing to make. And for all I believe that there is a difference in roles and responsibilities and relationships between mother and child and father and child, I still think fundamentally, if you're asking someone else to make a sacrifice that you're not willing to make, then that's something that you should really pay attention to, and that's something you should really think about. So I don't think that it is cool to say, I think it is absolutely absurd for you to suggest that I should be giving up time. Well, why can't you give up the same time? That's a bit of a dick move. I wouldn't do that. Now, a lot of people go, hey, OP writes a whole bunch about why these are the only options that they have available, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that it makes sense to go deeper into the scenarios that they have available to them, because ultimately this is a family decision. This is a decision that both of you need to sit down and hash out, and you need to come up with all the different options that you have available and see which compromise is going to hurt the least for both parties. And I think that requires you to think about this from the perspective of as a parent, not just from your perspective as a mother where you go, hey, I want this and I don't really care what you get, but how do we get the maximum time with our child and still have the best possible financial setup for both of us. And sometimes it does involve some sacrifice. If he said, no, yeah, you know what, fair enough, I am more okay with being away from her for 6 months than asking you to be away from her for 5 days. And I think it's better for her to have at least one of us available all the time, then fair enough. But if he's already like, you know what, I really don't want to do this 6 month thing, then I would also hear that out, because I don't think that you can force someone. And I don't think that it's fair. It's just a totally unfair expectation to have. That's not how sacrifices work in a marriage. If you want to sacrifice something, both of you have to be completely 100% on board and agreed on exactly what you're sacrificing, that you both have to be on the same page, and that's the only way that you can handle it. First comment says, hey, all of these plans don't sound great. You're not the a-hole for not wanting to leave your daughter all week. That suggestion is absolutely insane. I also don't think it's a fair suggestion to have your husband live several states away from his wife and child. There has to be some other way to make this work. And then people try to give suggestions, but again, like, there's literally no point in anyone else giving suggestions because no one understands what their circumstances are like. Next person says, so many things are wrong with this setup. I don't agree with living with family while you have a family, but you need your husband with you in a non-toxic environment. That's what your family provides. His mother is toxic and filling his head with rubbish that will make her the mother of your child and you a brief parent on the weekends. I think this is actually totally unfair. There is absolutely nothing in the thread that suggests that. As far as we can tell, you know, he called up his mom and he said, yeah, you know, our finances are in a bit of a shitty position. We have to change things up a little bit. We were thinking about her moving with the kid hours and hours and hours away, halfway down the country for the next 6 months. And then his mom was like, oh, you know, that kind of sucks. Maybe you can do this instead. Maybe that would be a better idea. That's the normal human way that conversation would have gone down. I think the suggestion and the accusation that the mother is toxic and she's looking for an opportunity to parent the child and to steal the child away sounds just awful. Like, I don't know why you would assume that. This person says, both of these plans sound pretty terrible, and I can see why he feels hurt that his attachment seems to be less important to you than your attachment is. While I would never give up a child 5 days a week, I also would not ask my husband to give up weeks with our child. Exactly. That's the point about it that makes it selfish and unfair. And then she says, there are so many flexible job opportunities that I would be looking for a job you can do when he is home or in your own time, even babysitting another similar age child while you're home with yours, whatever you need to do to bring in necessary income. Being a stay-at-home mom is a very expensive privilege, honestly, that many families cannot afford. And that's kind of exactly when you get to this point of, hey, the point is that you have to look for solutions that work for both of you as a couple, and expecting more from one side than you expect from the other one is never going to pan out in the long run. Like, that's not a good strategy for parenting in the long run. If you disagree with any of my takes about anything, feel free to leave a comment. Otherwise, feel free to subscribe for more similar content, and I will see you next time.